everybody, Jason here from Meridio, and on today's webinar tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the software package from Light Illusion called ColorSpace. Joining me today for the tutorial is the Light Illusion president, Steve Shaw. Steve, can you hear me? You look good.
Yep.
I think I can hear you.
Indeed, can hear you fine, Jason.
Great, good. Sorry about the little hiccup this morning, but we'll make it through it. No big deal. So Steve, I wanted to take this opportunity to really meet you. I don't think we've ever met in person, so I'm happy to meet you. I've seen your name out there for many years as I was growing up as a young calibrator, and I myself am very interested to see what you have to offer as far as software goes. I know the ColorSpace name is something you've been working on for a while and something you're very excited about. So I wanted to have you on and kind of give you an opportunity to tell the folks about yourself and about the software and show us a couple of cool things about it.
Yeah, sure. What do you want to know first?
Yeah, let's just give everybody kind of an intro to you and what your background is, and kind of a brief history lesson, if you will, on Light Illusion and how you ended up here.
Yeah, sure. I've been in the industry for some time. I actually joined a company called Quantel back when I was 16, just left school.
Very cool.
Obviously, they were very much in the bleeding edge of digital television back in the early days, with some of the first of the real digital TV systems moving away from analog. Was with them for quite some time. Eventually set up my own post-production companies, one called Men in White Coats, one called Axis Post. Again, the Men in White Coats was in the early days, so when we were still digitizing film and doing special effects.
Very cool.
Via that route. So films like Lost in Space, Deep Blue Sea, Elizabeth, Captain Jack, a whole bunch of others.
That is very cool.
And then we did Axis Post a few years later, when things had become much more digital throughout. And eventually I ended up just kind of doing consultancy work as a colorist. So traveling the world, grading films all over the place. Did a load of Bollywood stuff, which is interesting.
Neat. Huge market.
But I've lived in LA, in Japan, in New York, all over.
That's great, man.
And while doing that, we started having issues with color management for the projects that we were doing. And the first iterations of our Light Illusion software came out of my own desire to fix problems that I was facing. And the company really has just grown from that.
That's great. So for the folks who are listening, we talk a lot about in calibration, especially with folks who work in the studios and do color grading. All of those monitors have to match, right? If an editor sends the finished piece to a color grader and they send that finished piece back to the cinematography people, everybody has to be on the same page. And that's really the whole point of this, right? You want to be in a studio environment, or the whole workflow rather, every single monitor should be set to the same standard. That's kind of the point, right?
Yeah, I mean, within the limitations of the technology, there are certain points at which it becomes impossible. If you've got a display that can do really deep blacks versus something like a standard TNT LCD, then there are going to be differences. So the goal is to iron those out as much as humanly possible. Certainly, as you get into the more expensive end of the professional market, so the post-production broadcast market, then obviously the displays tend to be more consistent because the technology is inherently more consistent.
Sure.
But even then, yeah, calibration is key.
Good. So when we talk about Light Illusion in itself is the company, right? And then you've got products like ColorSpace. Do I have that right?
Yeah, Light Illusion is the company. We've had a bunch of products over the few years we've been going. Light Space being the most well-known one to date, but there's things like Spaceman, Space Match, Match Light, but
cool.
All geared towards color management. With ColorSpace, we really are starting from scratch because there were inherent issues in the way that we started developing the software, because it was never meant to do this. I mean, Light Space is somewhat 12, 15 years old. So, it was never intended to end up being the product that it is. So a few years ago, we took the decision to start from scratch and have basically totally rewritten the entire code base. so that we can go forward with a much more flexible product that we can develop to meet today's and tomorrow's requirements. And all of the products effectively are merging into the one. So Color Space will become the predominant single product that Light Illusion will be providing for the foreseeable future.
Great. And is Color Space, is that something that's available now, or is it still being kind of hashed out?
It's in alpha testing at the moment with a limited number of alpha testers dotted around the world. We will be going to a more open beta program, hopefully within the next week.
Cool.
And that will be opened up to anybody that signs up for that program when it goes live, that has already paid for an advanced Color Space license. And based on the way things are going at the moment, the full release should be very soon behind that.
Good, good. So you guys who are listening today, if you heard that from Steve, the beta will be available pretty soon. So if it's something you're interested in, Steve, at the end of the webinar here, we can probably give everybody your website. I think we'll look at the website a couple times today, and then maybe some contact information at the end in case anybody's interested. Yeah.
Yep, sure. No problem.
Great, great. Cool. So with that being said, guys, I just want to let everybody know the question box is open. So feel free if you have any questions throughout the presentation today. Tom's here hanging out, as you heard from him earlier. So he'll be watching the question box. I'll be watching it too. So as Steve is going through Color Space with us today, feel free to type any questions into that question box, and we'll be sure to address those. Now, Steve, with that being said, what I want to do now is I want to give you control over my computer, and you will be able to take over from here. So I'm going to share my screen. And Steve, you let me know, do you see that desktop with the Color Space?
Yep, we got it.
We're going to show people from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and close it so we have the icon. And from here, I'm going to give you my keyboard and mouse, and you should have control of the mouse.
Okay, right,
Perfect.
Got it. A little bit more laggy than yesterday during the test, but then isn't that always the case?
Of course, of course.
Yeah. Anyway, right, we'll get there. So opening up the icon should, there we go, open up the initial window for Color Space, which very simply has 3 icons along the top, which provide access to the 3 main areas of Color Space. So the first one with the cogs on it is a library. So it's where we can manage our different presets. And we've opened up 2 windows because it's a bit laggy. There we go. Oh, actually, I won't do that. We'll just keep it small for the minute and do that. There we go. So we have just basically things such as preset color spaces, preset color matrices, profiles, and obviously profiles that we've previously measured, which means we can access them and work with them directly if we're doing kind of modifications and things. But to generate profiles to start with is the second icon, which is profiling. And that will open up what is the kind of main window within Color Space, which is where we can actually take control of different hardware. Let's make that a bit bigger. There we go. We can take control of different hardware, so we can select from our different probes, which is where we were having problems because the COM port seems to have gone down on your PC. But the idea is that we should be able to connect to any of the probes that Lightspace is compatible with. We were using the COM6, wasn't it? Let's just see if it does come up. No, okay.
Still that error message. We'll have to investigate that later.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, in hardware, so in this case, the Meridio 6G patch generator, so that does connect, and you can see the monitor behind you is blacked out because we've taken control. And then we can go in and select, let's just go for a medium patch size, why not? And if we then go to manual measure and just make a color change, we should see, there we go, the patch behind your head changing color.
Very cool.
Okay.
I saw in there too that the 7G is already listed, so that's great.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. We've just finished that today. We were just working on getting the IP address protocol working. We got the comms protocol, so we've actually just finished that today.
Perfect.
The graph options is where, when we have information displayed here, we can control what we're looking at. And if we just do a random, let's go into presets. So I'm going to just call up a preset from okay, with the preset go we had,
pop into that Light Illusion folder.
Come on,
And
open up.
I dropped them
Open
all
up.
there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a, there we go. Ah, there it is. Right. So this is just a CSV list of color patches, which populates, in this instance, the preset list of colors, and we can then automatically work through those. Now, although if we connect to the virtual probe, because we haven't got a comms port working, at least we can see the patches change, but it will be random data that will populate the graph. So if we just go auto advance, measure, we're now going to auto measure. We can get rid of that window, we're not using that one. Go away, there we go. And he says it's more than that. Why is the graph not even there? Something has died on your hardware. That's interesting. We are not seeing any of the graphs. But what we can see is that it is working its way through the patches.
Yeah, they're changing behind me. Yeah, you can see it.
But that there's something really has died on your PC. Let me just try.
Yeah, go for it.
A preset color space to see if that kicks something into right. But this is not as it should be. Right. Let's just call up that one. No, this is suggesting that either your graphics card or part of it has failed. Well, that's going to cause a bit of a problem because that's the biggest part of the
yeah, that's what we want. That's what we want to see. Let's see.
Let's just close it down and see if we open it again. But we're using, I can't remember what graphics we're using at the moment, but it's almost as if the graphics of part of the laptop are not working. No. And that is definitely not a color space problem. That is
yeah,
something in your hardware.
So strange, because everything was fantastic when we were talking last night.
Oh joy.
Yeah. So let's maybe. Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for words here myself. Hang on, maybe somebody has a suggestion. David said computer reboot. Dave, we did that 2 or 3 times already, but thanks for the suggestion. Albino asks, did you get a Windows update yesterday night? I did not get a Windows update last night.
No, we always keep our PCs on the latest update. So if that would have happened, we'd have got it, and everything's working here.
And guys, what we may do here, just because we're having an issue here, and I hate to do this because we've got a lot of people listening in right now. We may have to take a break here and maybe pick up in the afternoon or even tomorrow maybe. I really apologize for this, guys. We've done so many of these sessions and webinars, and we've never had this problem before. So I'm really
Hey, Jason.
words. Yeah, Tom, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, well, why don't we just give it one more shot? I'll talk with Steve here for a little bit, and then we can see if you can shut down your computer, rejoin in, open the software. Maybe that will help. You know, maybe uninstall the software or reinstall it again or something. Who knows if it didn't get on your computer. And then I'll just talk to Steve. I mean, I got plenty to ask him as well.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys. Again, I'm real sorry. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
No problem. So, Steve, while Jason does that, you know, I appreciate you coming on here and running through all of this. I think that your background is extremely interesting. So, as you are in post-production and you're doing color grading, you know, at that same time, are you doing a lot of calibration as well? Because it seems like that would be the other side of the coin. Or do a lot of people who are doing color grading on films calibrate their own displays or their monitors? Tell me more about that world.
Well, look, in the post world, I mean, all monitors are calibrated in any post facility worth its salt.
Sure.
So whether it's done by a specialist in the facility, as the bigger ones do, or if it's a relatively small setup, it may be done by the colorist, and we certainly have a lot of those. I mean, my days of post of being directly involved are behind me. I mean, I sold out the post companies a few years ago, and haven't really touched the a colorist panel for some time. I don't have the time. So you know, light illusion has become pretty much everything now. So I'm kind of not a retired colorist, but I'm a lapsed colorist because I haven't actually done it for a while.
Sure.
But yeah, in the post market, yeah, any facility that is serious about the work they do will be working off of calibrated displays. They may do it in house. They may bring in a freelance calibrator. They bring in us. We certainly do it.
Sure.
But yeah, it is certainly a critical part of any facilities setup.
Yeah, I think that's just very, very cool. That world of, you know, there are a lot of people who are grading and editing and working on these films, and you know, I just wonder what the knowledge is of them to just go, you know, like, some, are they going to their station, sitting down and just deciding, oh, this is going to be perfect because somebody already took care of it for me? Or is it, oh, I can tell this is running a little blue or a little green, I'm going to make some adjustments myself? I just think that's really interesting how, you know, you did both, or, you know, you have a background with both of those things.
Well,
Um,
all of the software that we have, which is now, you know, culminated in color space, is predominantly aimed at the post-production broadcast market, because that is our history and our background. To be fair, we never really envisaged doing anything outside of that, but it was a few years ago we were the first to introduce 3D LUT calibration into the market, and we were approached by home cinema users who basically were desperate to get their hands on the same technology. So they forced our hands and really pushed us into becoming involved in the home cinema and AV market. That was never our original intent.
sure. And I guess I've always heard that, right? Because you know, as being from radio, having the background, hearing about light illusion, it's always, I've heard that, you know, from different calibrators, everybody has kind of, you know, when they get really into hardcore calibration, they have a different way of going about these simple problems, or, you know, methods of, maybe they disagree with the one software, or they like this one better. And that's where I started hearing about light illusion. And it always seemed that it was tied really closely to post-production,
Yeah.
to, you know, people who are doing you know, Hollywood movies, doing Bollywood movies, doing you know, the Canadian scene of Hollywood North. That's where I heard a lot of people using light illusion and hearing about light illusion. But I'm really hoping Jason gets his computer back up, because
Yeah.
I do want to see actual. I've never seen a workflow through light illusion to see how it would go, what it differentiates. You know, we at AV Pro and Meridio, we work closely with Calman. We did a Calman a uh, a webinar with them as well, and so I am really excited to see the differences and see how, you know, how light illusion is different than Calman, and then also, you know, how Calman is different than light illusion, and, you know, the different backgrounds of theories behind, you know, how your software works and then how their software works as well.
Yeah, you know, we are very different. The whole approach has grown up from the fact that all of the people involved in the company are in some way involved in the professional world. I mean, we've got people that used to work along with me at the likes of Quantel, people that are from Industrial Light and Magic, that have worked at CineSite. You know, we are all people from that background.
Sure.
One of the guys that was very much involved with us in the early days, he just because of pressure of work now is less involved, but he's still kind of a partner. It's a guy called Walter Valpato, who is one of Hollywood's top colorists. works now at, where's he gone to now? He was at Photochem. I think he's now at, where is he? Where is he now? Can't even think where he is. He did The Green Mile and in
wow.
loads of big films. But he worked for me in the early days when we were doing our consultancy work. I actually took him out to LA to finish a project that I was grading that went over time. And he stayed out there and has become one of the top colorists in LA.
Wow,
So
that's cool.
yeah, a lot of what we do comes from that experience of us doing the work for real.
Yeah. And that's really interesting. And that's a really cool dichotomy of between those two different theories in calibration. And as us being, you know, so born in the audio, video, home theater, you know, professional AV distribution field, it's really cool to see the other side where it would be growing out of the post-production field. We did have a question here that let me see. David Bod asks, can you talk a little bit about the difference between monitors and panel technologies? What is the trend from your perspective, and then what should we expect in the future?
Well, that's an almost impossible question. I mean, monitors, displays are basically a box of, dare I say, bits that are pulled together to make an end unit. And obviously the manufacturers pull together the glass, the screen from some manufacturers, the electronics from elsewhere. They develop their own to go with it, and the main part of that is the screen, the glass, which just changes so quickly. I mean, in the days when I was doing the visual effects world with Men in White Coats, the only monitors that we used were the large Barco CRTs that were as fat as they were wide and
Sure.
weighed 5 times as much. But that was it. Everything was CRT. Obviously today it's just gone crazy, and there are so many different technologies that are vying for position. Right now, there's no really one technology that really beats all until you get into the silly money side of it, where the multi-layer LCDs really are proving to be the best. But that technology is starting to filter down into the home TV market.
Really?
And I suspect that we will see the OLED side of it, specifically the WOLEDs, will end up being a stopgap that will be replaced with other technologies because of the limitations that they have. But you know, who knows? Something may come out of left field that will change totally our expectations.
Sure. Yeah, and that's very interesting. So those high dollar monitors that you're talking about, what did you call it? Interlace LCD, or what was the?
Dual layer. Things like the X310 from the likes of Flanders Scientific, they use a dual layer LCD approach, so that you have the ability to control, if you like, almost at the level of a backlight per pixel. So
Oh
you can
wow.
control the contrast of any given pixel, whether it's emitting a bright light or zero light, which means you can have a virtually infinite contrast ratio without the issues of OLEDs.
That's wild. So then, I mean, are those kind of monitors you're talking $50,000 plus for those?
I don't know that they're quite that level, but they're certainly,
Sure.
you know, 30, 35,000. But the technology, I know that, what do they call it? TLC, TCL. They
TCL,
have
yeah.
started, yeah, they have started with a consumer version of the same technology, which has just come to market. It's, you know, it's not quite the same, but it's very close, and I think it will continue to become more preeminent in the market. Because it doesn't have the gamut issues that WOLEDs have. It doesn't have the issue with black turn on, turn off. So potentially it could get there, but at the moment it has issues such as viewing angle. So, you know, things are, you know, nothing's perfect as yet.
Sure. Some more questions are coming in here as Jason still looks like we got Jason's screen back, but still not seeing those graphs. So
Not a minute,
Yeah.
no.
If you guys want, Steve, I'll give you the mouse again and we can try.
Well, okay, yep. We'll just-
I've got the virtual probe and the Meridio connected again, but I'm not seeing the graph, so we might still be in this
if the
position.
graphs aren't coming up, then there's no point, because that obviously is the key. I mean, we can, there's a demo video on the website that will at least
Yeah.
give us a little bit of a view of the graphs, but it would help if I stopped the lag, because they're killer.
And what we can maybe do, Tom, because there's a pile of questions pouring in for Steve.
Yeah, shout them out.
Yeah, maybe for this session we can just go through some of these questions and then we can kind of reconvene and give this another shot.
Well, that sounds great. There's a
Yeah.
lot of questions coming in, so keep those questions coming in, guys. It looks like we may not be able to get this, but Jason, I'll turn this back over to you and drop out. Steve, it's great to meet you and nice talking to you, and thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the backup.
Yeah, somebody's going very slow here. Yeah, no, it's that's
Still not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It is very much as if the software side of the graphics has died.
Something happened between last night and this morning when you and I
Well,
reconnected.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the comms ports on the laptop are not working properly, and that there's obviously something's not right. We're not going to get around it. So
yeah, I'll tear everything apart and we'll meet again. That's okay. And guys, again, I'm really sorry. This is quite embarrassing for me. We've done, like I said, you guys have probably seen, we've done tons and tons of these sessions and never issues like this. So again, I apologize, but this is a great opportunity since we have a million questions pouring in. So let me turn off the screen. And Steve, if you want to at any point too, if you want to show anybody anything on the website, perhaps, of course, feel free to do that as well. So let's take a look at some of these questions.
So Jason, the one to stop or where we're starting at is going to be Daniel Lieberman, and his question is: I have been a Calman user for many years. I use a Meridio 6G 6A and a SpectraCal C6. Will these work with Light Illusion software?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Good. Okay. I think I know the answer to this one. Daniel also asked Lumagen compatibility. I see Lumagen all over your website and inside the software as well.
Yep.
I have a little bit of experience with the Lumagens. I've got a few people I've calibrated for in the past who've had those. Do you see those Lumagens being added to normal consumer TVs, or are you seeing that more from your perspective, more in kind of the high-end home theater? That's typically where I see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's home theater, but whether it's people's home TVs that they're just trying to get to be more accurate, or whether they're building full-blown home cinemas, that's the user's question.
Good. Chris asks, does Light Illusion Color Space also support 3D lookup tables on Lumagen Radiance Pro? Because you were talking about home theater, I think that kind of answers that question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To be fair, we actually work very closely with Lumagen because we offer a consultancy service to display and hardware manufacturers. So we actually do a lot of hardware consultancy on this, and we have worked very closely with Lumagen to make sure that their signal path is as accurate as it needs to be.
Yeah, I love Jim. I mean, I've talked to Jim many times. I've been to a couple of his classes. He fits in that same box as everybody that we talk to, yourself included, Steve. That he's just very, very, very concerned about the quality and the accuracy of the picture. So we're definitely in good company when Jim's around. That's awesome. Lucy asks, what are the differences between Color Space Cal and the LTE version regarding displays, probes, and lookup box support?
There is a matrix on the website that explains all of the differences because it's a bit hard to remember all of them.
Sure.
But each of the license levels introduces a new level of capability. So, for example, the LTE version, it works with the kind of X-Rite level of probe, predominantly, along with things like Spider, and with the more kind of lower end displays such as ISO certain FSIs and things like that. As you go up the range, more hardware gets introduced so that you can work with Canon displays, with Dolby and so on as you move up the license level. There's only the 4 license levels, I think. But
Yeah.
if you bring that, you've got the website there?
Yeah, let's bring the website up, sure. And if you'd like, if it's easier for you, I will give you control. That way the folks...
we try and keep it up to date as much as possible with all the various info.
Sure, sure. Okay, let me pull this page over here, and then I will give you the mouse. And I'm going to share my screen 1, and I will give you the mouse, all yours.
Okay, so come on. No, I don't seem to have control.
No mouse. Let me try one more time. And go now.
Yeah,
there we go.
Right, okay. So if we just go to the color
and this,
space.
by the way, guys, this is just lightillusion.com. That's all.
Lightillusion.com. Yeah, absolutely. And if we scroll down the page a little bit, and there's what the graphs we should be looking at, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, if we just go down to the features matrix, then you can see here that we have all the different license levels. So we've got the professional calibration, professional LUT management, home cinema, manual cal, and then these ones are for kind of independent color management. So image matching, we can extract LUTs from 2 images with different grades on them, manage obviously ICC profiles and so on. But if we scroll down to something like monitors, here we go, hardware options. If we hover over there, it tells you the hardware that the total package will work with. And then when you hover over these boxes, it tells you what options that particular license has. So There you can see that LTE works with that hardware. And if we hover up, it works with those probes.
Perfect. Great. So yeah, guys, visit the website if you have any of those real specific questions. Visit the lightillusion.com and check out this matrix graph here. And if you have any questions from there, just feel free to reach out. The support tab in the upper right there, Steve, is that where people can get a hold of you if they have really detailed questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's on a menu, so you obviously contact forms,
Perfect.
the rest of it. But I mean, the email address is always the same, steve@lightillusion.com. It's pretty well known. But
Good.
the website we do keep pretty much up to date. So you can see if we actually go to the color space development status, then it tells you there. Last update was 5 days ago. Obviously, we are now on the alpha test. The beta is nearly complete and will be going live, I hope, next week. And then obviously the full release is a little bit behind, but we will actually release before we complete. So there will be a few features missing, but we will do a full release before that point.
Sure.
Yeah, so the information is pretty much there.
Great. Let's take a look at some more of the questions here. And the next one is from Thomas. Question to Steve. You once said you're not very fond of OLED displays. I think it was because of the color volume. Do you think quantum dot OLEDs will be better in that respect?
Well, it's WOLEDs that are the issue, not OLEDs, because the white pixel means that as the brightness of the image increases, the color volume gets less and less.
Right.
So any 4-color or 4-pixel display that has an additional white pixel will suffer that issue.
And as far as these the quantum dot OLED hybrids that we'll probably see here pretty soon, do you think that will fix some of these issues?
If they are RGB pixel only, then that works. If they have a white pixel, then it won't work.
Cool. And that's yet to be seen. We don't know yet. These announcements have really just kind of been made.
I mean, OLEDs have other issues. I mean, OLEDs have an issue coming out of black. They have a hysteresis, which means that if you go below a certain black threshold, it then cuts out quite quickly rather than smoothly. Obviously, what it does have is good viewing angles, well, although WOLEDs have a bit of an issue with that.
Sure.
But compared to LCDs, there are benefits.
Right.
But then, you've got to take your choice. So that each technology, as I said earlier, has issues at the moment. There isn't one that really works. I don't like OLEDs at all because I find the image very plasticky. It lacks a feeling of texture that you get with other technologies. That's personal. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just my personal view.
Sure. Yeah.
WOLEDs, yeah, because of the gamut issue as the brightness increases, yeah, I have a major issue with that.
Are you looking very forward to like the I think I may have joined when you and Tom may have been mentioning this, but the whole micro LED thing that we've seen at the trade shows.
Yeah,
do you think that would be a good fix?
Yeah, the concept of dual layer LCD has a lot of interest. Obviously, that now is what the majority of the post-production world is using for high-end grading. Things like Flanders Scientific's X310, but they're the same from Sony, although Sony have an issue because they don't allow user calibration.
Right.
But Postium or another manufacturer, I believe Convision are about to release a monitor with the same technology. So at the minute, at the high end, that is the go-to technology.
We saw in New York, just very briefly, I wish we could have spent more time with it, but we were playing around for about 15 minutes with the dual layer LCD, and all of the things that we've always sort of been apprehensive about with LCD, it seems like that fixes all of the problems. The blacks were excellent. I mean, it was very, very bright in certain scenes, of course. And for the 10 or 15 minutes I spent with it, I just wanted to spend more time with it. It was a very, very cool monitor.
Yeah, it has serious potential. I mean, because effectively you have a monitor that has an independent backlight per pixel, and
right.
You know, that's it. It works. There are potentially issues with viewing angle, that kind of thing. But again, I'm sure they will overcome them. Whether quantum dot or something else, you know, actually becomes even better, we don't know. I mean, right now I'm due to replace our main home TV. It's probably 4 or 5 years old, and I'm just sat on the fence. I'm waiting. I'm just not spending money at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Especially now we're in the middle of a model change year and everything. It probably would be better to wait. Or were you a big plasma guy? I had a Panasonic myself for many years, and I loved that TV.
Yeah, we use those a lot. Again, in the post industry, they were the first of the kind of consumer technology that really started to work in the professional market. So yeah, they really did, you know, make a bit of a game changer. Except, you know, AVL was an issue, and you know, you had to be careful with that. But no, they were certainly a very interesting technology, but the power consumption was a killer.
Sure. Oh yeah, I remember my living room at one point. I had the 65-inch Panasonic and a 2-channel tube system running, and it didn't take very long for that room to get nice and warm. But it was fun. It was a ton of fun. That TV is still in my circle. I've got that TV at a friend's house right now, and he's enjoying the heck out of it. Great monitor that one was. It was a little heavy, but it looked fantastic. Great viewing angles, fantastic motion. Another question comes in: at which quote unquote low price displays would you recommend for color grading? Have you seen any low price displays that have kind of met your standards if you're doing some serious color grading work?
No. I mean, the problem with that is you get what you pay for.
Right.
I would probably say that the lowest that we would recommend are things like ISO CG range that have the ability to have 3D LUTs. So the 324X, something like that. Yeah. But they're still not low end. They're not, you know, hundreds of dollars. They're still over $1,000.
Oh, sure.
The minute you go below that, I mean, one of the biggest problems is the manufacturers change the specification of the components that they use on a whim. So even though we may test, I don't know, a Dell or a HP or whatever, but something that is a few $100s, we may test it 1 week and say, oh, actually, that's responded quite well.
Yeah.
But then someone buys it a month later and it's nothing like it because they've changed it without.
The internals are different. Yeah, definitely. David asks, this is a rabbit hole type of question, Steve, so feel free to keep it kind of brief. But yeah, because we could talk about this one forever. Could Steve talk about an overview of calibration? Which steps are important in general? Wow, yeah, that we could go on for hours on that. From my perspective, I mean, the first things I look at is dynamic range, getting white level, black level correct for the room that it's in. That's, to me, the most important thing after getting the best mode chosen. What do you think?
Okay, we actually have a very simple approach to this. unlike other systems, we don't use workflows. We
Right.
don't take the users through a step-by-step process, because it's way too restrictive and means that you're not actually going to get the best out of the display and the probe and all the rest of it that you have. So we have a very simple approach. Set up the display so that it is uncalibrated. Turn off everything that you can. Set up the black and white point to be relatively in the target that you want. With black, that normally means as black as the display goes, unless you've got an OLED, in which case lift it slightly to stop it having this issue coming out of black. And that's it. So the display is basically in its neutral, uncalibrated, unmessed with form.
Right.
Then profile it. In our terminology, profiling just means to measure the display with as many patches as possible, so you record what the display's inherent capability is. From that profile data, you then build a 3D LUT that you load either into the display or into your grading program or into a LUT box to compensate for the errors of the display. And it is that simple.
Yeah.
When you start getting into manual calibration and just trying to adjust things with the monitor GUI, yeah, it's so variable with the display you're playing with that there's no right or wrong. That one is a per monitor set of parameters.
Definitely. Yep, I 100% agree. Okay, we got a couple more, and then I think we'll wrap up, and then we'll reconvene to figure out our other issue. But Thomas asks, how would you calibrate a display like a consumer LCD TV, which has varying color performance depending on the patch size you choose? Best performance is on full screen patches, worst on 1% patches. I think the reason might be attributed to non-defeatable local dimming and gamma manipulation. The smallest patches have big luminance errors. So how would you calibrate? Would you use full screen patches where errors are the lowest, or small patches where errors are the highest?
Yeah, to be fair, I would take a different approach. I would use in the patch sequence that you're using, I would insert what we call drift patches and stabilization patches to attempt to overcome that inherent. What you're trying to do is to mimic real footage that is continuously changing, but not just in the patch itself.
Right.
So we will insert, say, a 90% white and a 0% black. Probably the black after every patch, the white after every 10 patches, so that we both stabilize the display, but with the drift patches, we measure the display non-stability, and we can actually use that within our calibration algorithm to compensate for the errors during the profile.
Good, very good. And same person, Thomas asks, which color space version would you recommend to a professional TV reviewer whose job is to assess display performance in the factory settings and not necessarily to calibrate it?
That will depend on the probe being used, because there are three predominant options in the home cinema side of it, or the AV side, which is HTL, HTP, and HTX. And the difference is purely on the hardware that they will connect with. So predominantly probes in this instance. The HTX version has the ability to work with ICC profiles as well, which probably isn't going to be relevant. So if you're using, say, a CR100 or a Klein K10A, then it would be HTP. If you're using the X-Rite probes, then that would be HTL.
Good, good, excellent. So again, that website we looked at earlier with the matrix, we can kind of find that.
Yep.
Perfect, perfect. Thomas asks, will it be possible in color space to display 2 or more color volume graphs side by side for different picture presets?
Oh yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big one for you, I'm sure.
It's, I mean, the architecture of color space is completely open. We can have as many windows open as we want. We can have each window displaying different graphs, different profile data connected to different probes, so you can actually be measuring multiple things simultaneously. The single windows themselves will also be able to display multiple graphs from the same profile live as you're taking measurements and so on.
That's great.
This is a key part of color space. We have made it so flexible.
And for him as a TV reviewer, if he's just looking at each preset out of the box, that's a really important feature. That's great.
Mm.
Sylvan says he's been using Lightspace to calibrate broadcast monitors, and he's very happy with it. So there you go, Steve. There's a nice compliment from Sylvan. Great, great. Okay, Emma asks a question about the probe. Does it make a difference between calibrating with the i1 Display Pro OEM and taking a profile from an i1 Pro 2 using i1 Display Pro? I've calibrated both ways, couldn't tell a difference. I've got a little bit of a perspective on this personally, and Steve, I'm sure you've got tons of experience with this as well. If you're using a OEM i1 Display Pro and you profile it with an i1 Pro 2, I find those results to be very, very, very good in most cases. The only time I get a little sketched out with using the i1 Pro 2 as a reference meter is with the laser phosphor-based projectors. Are you kind of in that same ballpark?
The i1 Pro spectros are all 10 nanometer, 8 nanometer, 10 nanometer,
10.
whichever.
They're 10. Yep, they're 10.
Yep. So there's a limit as to the accuracy that they can work to when you are dealing with narrow spectral response displays.
Right.
But having said that, they are very good. One of the alpha testers on ColorSpace, who is also a Lightspace user, has just picked up a Jetty 1501 from us.
Great.
And first thing he did was compare his existing i1 Pro 2 with it.
Yep,
and
same here.
He was surprised at how good it was on the displays that he's working with.
Yeah.
But there are limitations beyond that. I don't know how many people have read our perceptual color match document on the website, or the page on the website. But in partnership with Flanders Scientific a couple of years back, we did a lot of research on the issue with metameric failure, specifically with the likes of WOLEDs and laser projection, again, where you have narrow bandwidth and human response starts to vary between observers. And to be fair, the approach that we came up with to use a perceptual way of matching a tristimulus to a stable display has proven to be very, very good, and that's become the standard in post-production throughout the world. And and again, most home cinema guys have gone down that route of understanding. It's further enhanced with the ability to do volumetric probe matching on our software, so that you don't rely on the old 4-color matrix method or the LG version of 3 times 4 colors.
Right.
You can actually volumetrically compare and match 2 different probes, and that really has proven to be very, very accurate way of using probes on the modern technologies.
That's great. I remember I got a Jetty 1511 myself late last year. Actually, it's been about a year now because it just came back from calibration. So I think I got April last year. And the first thing I did when I got that meter is I went around and compared all of my TVs I had here in the house just to make sure that all the ones I had profiled the i1 Pro 2 with were still accurate. And for things like the OLED and at the time I had an LCD here as well, and it was all doing really well. Where I started to see some differences if I started to measure some really, like you said, some devices that had a very, very, very narrow peak in the spectral power response. But yeah, if you're looking at a traditional OLED display or LCD display, profiling with the i1 Pro 2 is a fantastic, and honestly for the money too, the i1 Pro 2 is a very, very good price.
Yeah, to be fair, they do a good job at their price level. I mean, where you start to notice differences is when you're looking at composite colors. If you compare kind of pure primaries or secondaries, where the color matrix is relatively simple, they work relatively well. When you start getting into more complex colors, skin tones being a good example, that's where you start to notice more of the inaccuracies.
Yeah. So and just so you guys know too, we talked about the i1 Pro 2 being a 10 nanometer device, which is pretty narrow, but it's not nearly as narrow as we would like to see for certain types of displays, like those laser phosphors.
Yeah.
The Jetty, I think from the factory, comes with a 5 nanometer optical bandwidth, and you can opt for a 2 nanometer optical bandwidth, which I did on my personal unit. The only trade-off was that the readings are a little bit slower. A lot of it slower, but they're slower. But
I mean, the Jetty are good. The colorimetry research Spectro CR300 is awesome. But yeah, you're trading accuracy for speed at that level, but then you're using it to match your tri-stimulus too, so you know, less of an issue.
It takes, you know, it might take 3 minutes to make the profile instead of, you know, 2. It's not that big. It's not that big of a deal at all. At all. Julian Scott's on. Hey, Julian, I'm glad to see you here. He says, Steve, what's your opinion on using alternative white points for WOLED?
Well, that's what we were talking about with the perceptual matching of displays. That there are so many different variants on that. One of the issues with it is that the WOLEDs, they're not consistent. The relative color of white isn't the same on all panels, so you're going to have to take each panel individually and use the perceptual match approach for that particular piece of glass. But yeah, the concept of perceptual matching has proven itself time and again to be the best approach.
What I've seen personally is that you have 2 displays next to each other, and the WOLED, in my experience so far, has looked more pink than the other, even though the numbers were good, right? Yeah, good. Okay, I think we got time.
It is about that. So you've got to get the whites to look the same, and you can expand it and treat the primary colors the same way and get them to perceptually match. You then read what those values are on the WOLED when they're matched, and that becomes your new, a color space set of values.
Perfect. Guys, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more here. Let's see, there's a couple more questions in the question box. Chris says, don't dual layer LCDs have more off-axis viewing issues compared to LCD TVs? For color grading, they might be great because there's only one person sitting on axis, but what about home use? Are you noticing viewing angle issues with the dual layers?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, but already we're seeing less of that in the 2nd generation versions. So yeah, it's something that I think will either be addressed or if not, a different technology will come along.
Yeah. Something will come along, yeah. I saw a video recently on YouTube, and I didn't even know this thing existed. I think it was Toshiba at one point, maybe in the 80s or 90s, had made a CRT LCD hybrid, just a little like broadcast monitor. So who knows what who knows what they might come up with next. Good. Lucy asks, what package would you recommend for calibration for a small color grading studio? He's thinking maybe an i1 Display Pro OEM plus Color Space LTE. Is the LUT box totally necessary?
Depends on the monitor that you're using and the graphics program that you're using. If using, for example, something like Resolve with a display that has no LUT capability, Resolve can have a LUT placed in the output signal so that you can actually effectively calibrate the monitor at the end of the Resolve signal chain.
Good.
So for LTE and the i1 Display Pro is, the minimum.
Nicholas asks, this is a great question. What gamma should you aim for, 2.2 or 2.4, for today's new movies? Is there some new industry standard? I've got a little bit of perspective on this, Nicholas. 2011, I believe, the EOTF was actually defined in that BT 1886. That's when that was addressed, which is very, very, very close to 2.4. And I'll just tell you from my experience, and even something I do at home, I actually experienced this over the weekend, funny enough. With my projector I've been playing with here at the house. I'm watching an older movie, Fight Club, and at 2.4 or 1886, the blacks were just gone. So in some cases, I will bump the gamma down for maybe an older movie that was maybe pre-2011. So I'm sort of taking those things into consideration when I'm setting up my picture modes for my own display at home. So Steve, what do you think, 2.2 or 2.4 for new movies? I'm going to assume here you're in a light controlled room.
Yeah, a 2.4 is the standard. The BT 1886 though is an interesting point because it has a 2.4 response only if black is 0. The minute you lift black, then the shadows lift, as does the entire gamma. The entire gamma to a degree. EOTF, sorry, it's not a gamma, it's an EOTF at that point. We do not recommend 1886 to anybody. The concept was to try to mirror old CRTs, but it just doesn't work. It washes out the blacks or the near blacks. So all of our post partners, clients, they all just stick to a standard 2.4 power law because it just maintains consistency.
Good. Good, good, excellent, excellent. And then looks like there's maybe one or two more here. Carlos, he must be a user already. He says, is there a CSV file to use as drift compensation, or how can I build one?
You don't need to. Whatever CSV file that you generate, the system will then just insert drift patches to whatever value you set. So CSVs do not have drift or stabilization patches in them. They just have the raw profile patches.
Okay, good, good. Let's see. It looks like there's maybe a couple of more here. Oh, here's a good question. How's the reliability of using Wi-Fi when you're using color space?
It's got nothing to do with the software. It's entirely down to the network.
Okay, good. So whether you're hardwired or on Wi-Fi, from your perspective, it doesn't matter.
If you've got a lockdown network with nothing else on it, then you're not going to have interrupt issues and things like that. If you're using your Wi-Fi at home and someone's playing a movie or doing download or whatever they're doing, you're going to have interrupts, and that can cause problems. But as far as we're concerned, a connection is a connection. That's it.
That's it. Good, good. Okay, two more. I think we may have already mentioned this before for Emma. Do you have any official date for the release of Color Space? I think you said it's around the corner, but do you have an actual date?
Yeah, we're late. I mean, we should have had this out last year. We've ended up doing way more to the core code than we anticipated for the first release. We intended to do a lot of this stuff in version 2, as it were, but we've ended up having to do it now to really give us the flexibility that we want. As I say, we are in alpha testing, have been for a week or so. We're actually up to alpha 9 as of today. We will be going beta almost definitely next week. There is one caveat to that, in that we are making a major change to the way the licensing is structured. That may cause a little delay. But with beta being open to anybody that has paid for an advanced color space license, we expect to be able to get through that very quickly. So we really are on the cusp. But how long's a piece of string?
Right. Yeah. I picked up a saying, and I don't know where I got it from anymore, but it's not good when it's done. It's done when it's good.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. It's got to be good.
Yeah. Mike says, how well does Color Space handle HDR, and are you excited about it?
HDR is handled pretty much in the same way as light space at this stage. So we are not ourselves at the moment doing any metadata insertion. You would need to use something like an HD Fury or
Sure.
Mad VR or whatever. It's something we will look into deeper when we get the first iteration of color space out. You've got to remember that the post market doesn't use metadata for HDR.
Right.
All HDR is raw. The metadata only comes into play when you're talking about home consumer TVs. Even that may go away, because if the home TV can match the peak brightness of the monitor that was used for mastering, there is no need for metadata.
It's not an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, so to be fair, we're sitting on the fence a little bit to see where this goes, but we will certainly be addressing it to a greater level, especially as graphics cards can now do the metadata and things like that. But again, it's not probably a key priority because we think this is going to change in the very near future. So we're being a little bit cagey about it.
I've kind of said now for a couple of years that once displays are bright enough, then the whole tone mapping thing, that whole conversations, we'll be looking at this in 10 years, laughing, laughing about it. Hey, remember tone mapping?
Yeah. If you've got a master that was done on a 3000 nit professional display, and you're looking at home on a 3000 nit consumer TV, you don't need metadata.
Yeah. All good. Good. Okay, cool, guys. Do me a favor. There's a couple more questions rolling in. We're just about out of time here. Save any questions that you may have from here on out for Steve directly or for me directly. And again, we'll give you guys our emails at the end here. We'll knock out maybe one or two more questions here, and we'll kind of turn everybody loose for the day. Thomas asks, this may be sort of a preference thing really, but Thomas asks, do you have any favorite probes that you use daily? Specifically, maybe the difference between K10, like a Klein that I've got here, or a CR100?
We have all probes, and we just trying to grab the first one that's nearest to us as we're walking
Yeah.
out the door.
Yeah.
Yes, the high end, the K10s, the CR, the Jetties, they are obviously our go-to at the
Right.
high end. But we've got X-Rights here. We've got them, Discurses. We got them all.
Yeah. I've always been a fan of the fact that all the meters are good. They all do their job. It just depends on accuracy and speed and budgets and all these other things. I mean, it's almost like when you talk about the high-end meters, it's like you're going car shopping and your choices are BMW, Mercedes. It's like you're not going to get a bad one. It just you want to pick the one that really fits your needs the best, really.
Yeah, we like them all for the fact that they all do produce pretty consistent results. So yeah,
totally. Yep. It's kind of like you like some TVs technologies for some things and some for others. It's what's the right tool for the job is really the question.
I mean, we are amazed at the quality that you get out of things like the little i1D3 and even the i1 Pro 2, Pro 3s. Sure. For what they are pretty impressive.
Good. Yav asks, actually, we'll do one from Yav and one from Amma. Amma asks, which lookup table boxes do you recommend? I'm not sure what this is. Maybe you have some BMD 6G SDI to HDMI. I'm not sure what that means exactly. Maybe you do.
Blackmagic, yeah.
Blackmagic Design. Duh. Of course. Yeah. Of course.
Yep. Again, they are pretty much all the same, so long as they will pass a signal cleanly and apply the LUT correctly. Some of the boxes, like some of the Blackmagics, you've got to know what the signal path is, whether it's full range or TV legal, and handle it accordingly. If you get that right, they work fine. Get it wrong, then it's wrong. Other boxes like Box.io from FSI, they handle it really well. There's a price difference.
Sure.
The home market, I mean, if you've got HD TVs only, not 4K, then the Prisma that you guys make, the EE Color, they've been very good, although both now out of manufacturing. Obviously Lumagen, Arja make LUT boxes as well for the professional market. There's not really a bad one anymore. The old, dare I say, Blackmagic HD Link Pro wasn't good.
Yeah.
It distorted the LUTs that got loaded into it.
It seems like too, if we're talking lookup table boxes now versus even 5 years ago, now it seems like there's so many more to choose from. The prices have come down, the performance has greatly improved, just like everything else we see in consumer or even professional electronics. Good. Yav asks, does ACES, does ACES integration, will that be like with Light Illusion? I'm not sure what ACES is. Are you familiar?
It's a professional color space for color workflows in post-production houses to enable the transference of images consistently between different post houses. It's well known that I'm not a fan of ACES. It's a solution looking for a problem. But nevertheless, it's there, it's used, and yes, we fully support it. And it isn't yet in color space. It's one of the modules that we've not done. But yeah, it will be in there. It will be different because we're doing the whole of the LUT management, LUT manipulation part of color space differently, but the tools will be inherently similar because that is what they need to be.
Good. Well, guys, tons of excellent questions, and thank you so much for hanging out. And again, I apologize for the little technical difficulty we had at the beginning, but we will do a follow-up in a part 2 to this session, and we'll get the hardware sorted out, and we'll have Steve show us some actual live demos on the TV I've got back here, and we'll take a look at the software. So stay tuned, guys, for part 2. We will definitely do one of those to show you some of the more technical things and to show you the ins and outs of the software. I don't see any more questions coming in. If you guys do have any questions that you might think of between now and the next session, feel free to shoot us an email. Steve, you said you're steve@lightillusion.com, yes?
Yep, correct.
Perfect. And I, of course, jason@avproglobal.com. Thank you guys so much for hanging out and spending the time with us today. Steve, thank you so much for your knowledge and your experience and answering all these questions for these folks. They seem to have tons of good questions, and thank you for spending the time with us today.
Pleasure.
Cool. And stay tuned, guys. I'll get the schedule sorted out, and we will work on getting a part 2 scheduled as soon as possible. We just have to find an open time to do it, because we do already have some sessions scheduled for next week. But no worries, we'll definitely do it, and we'll be letting everybody know when that next session will be going. Feel free to sign up, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for hanging out. We'll see you then. Bye,
Cheers,
Steve.
bye.
Thanks.